Hello everybody and welcome to our webinar today. Today we've invited FlowForma and Octagon Value Change to share with you some use cases and recommendations to help you take the fast road to process improvement. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Ian Hawkins. I'm the editor of PEX Network. Now the PEX Network's mission is to be the very first port of call for the leader of any business, large or small, to find practical advice on making their organization more efficient, profitable and agile. We're an indispensable resource for leaders and their teams, a forum for thought leaders and publishers of the latest research in a continually innovating and developing industry. We curate podcasts, white papers, articles, videos, and webinars just like this one. Our aim is to educate, inform, and inspire leaders of organizations of every size around the world, from the latest developments in RPA and AI to evergreen wisdom on management and leadership. Now, if this is the first time you joined us on a webinar, let me run you through a couple of bits of housekeeping. First of all, there's a Q&A box on your screen, and if you have any questions you'd like to ask the speakers, or if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, just submit your comment there, and I'll either put it to the panel, or one of my technical minions will jump onto the case. Now, this session is being recorded, so if you miss anything, don't panic. There will be a link sent round so that you can refresh your memory or, and I encourage you to do this with all the enthusiasm you can muster, share it with your colleagues, friends, anyone else you think will find it useful. PEX Network is also a network, so if you'd like to get in touch with me or with the speakers, use LinkedIn, feel free, do make a connection. We all love to talk. So today with us we have Paul Stone, who is the product expert at FlowForma. Paul has 30 years experience in the IT industry. He's a highly accomplished IT professional. He is the FlowForma go-to product expert from both a business and technical perspective. Paul works closely with FlowForma's clients, supporting them in the delivery of FlowForma's no-code process automation tool, helping organizations automate and streamline their business processes. We also have Clifford Lee, who is the Vice President at Octagon Value Chain. Clifford is an operations and supply chain expert with 30 years of improving operational and supply chain infrastructure, policies and processes in multi-site and multinational complex global organizations. He has profound strategy deployment, Lean Six Sigma, and process excellence improvement experience and know how to drive business performance and transformation through creative, inclusive team resource management. So with Cliff's background in business process consultancy and Paul's knowledge of automating processes without any coding, you should be in for some really valuable insights and recommendations today. Let's take you through the agenda. The session is how to take the fast lane to process improvement. Clifford and Paul will kick off this webinar discussing process optimization with some really interesting use cases, followed by a mini case study on the A14 construction project. Paul will then bring us through a short demo of the no-code FlowForma process automation tool, and then we'll host a Q&A session at the end of today's webinar to answer your questions. So do use the Q&A box, otherwise we won't have much to talk about. But now, let me hand you over to today's speakers, Paul Stone from FlowForma and Clifford Lee. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Ewan. This is Clifford Lee, and welcome, everybody. We really appreciate you spending a bit of time with us today. I'm going to start things off by laying some groundwork on how to get started with a process optimization initiative, and then we'll build from there. Here we want to discuss how process optimization lays the foundation for capability advancement. One of our key messages in this webinar is that there is a basic OpEx fast lane formula that any business can use to facilitate the rapid adoption of advanced techniques to evolve a value chain from being reactive to disruptions to a more progressive mode of continuous evolution through a stepwise progression of process efficiency actions, which is depicted here. Now, the first and most crucial step in this process is to gain deep insights into the execution efficiency of the business system that you wish to improve. At Octagon, we refer to this as the control authority of the system, which is exactly analogous to how this term is used in aviation, and which is where if you're a pilot, you want to have absolute control authority over your aircraft for obvious reasons. And similarly in business, control authority, which is crucial for strategy deployment, can only be advanced by establishing high execution efficiency. Now, this isn't trivial work, and in many cases, baselining a system requires advanced methods to accomplish, as I'll summarize for you on the next slide. However, once this step is completed, you can really cash in on your learnings by establishing a single view of critical performance measurements, as you see in the second step there, to aid in both operational agility to constant change as well as strategic decision making. Now, one final point I'd like to make here is that along this whole chain of evolution that you see, the critical work of process digitization, as we'll hear more from my colleague, Paul Stone. It's an essential enabler every step of the way. Let's drill into the initial process optimization step, the purpose of which is to understand weaknesses and gaps in a business system, such as a value chain or any of its subcomponents. These gaps include outdated, inefficient, or even undocumented business processes, which severely damage a business's ability to maintain high performance in the face of constant change. Also in this step, we look for critical influence factors, some call these levers, which must be understood and their impact quantified before we can move forward with any initiative. But once this is accomplished and we've updated and aligned policies and business processes with the business strategy, cross-functional and predictive performance metrics for crucial impact factors can be developed as needed to steer a steady course through change and achieve the desired outcomes. Now, some, if not many, of these factors are known to an organization, e.g. these are the what I call here the captain obvious issues. And so the first step is to get these cataloged and quantified if they aren't already. However, as I'm going to cover here in a brief case study in a minute, often it's the hidden and indirect factors that aren't being addressed that can seriously impact performance. And these must be identified and quantified, and it can be done so through any number of useful continuous improvement tools, such as the fishbone diagram that's shown here. And then finally, when we're dealing with large and complex systems that have a ton of data, it becomes necessary to quantify the aggregate impact of a host of factors. And in this manner, we can gain a comprehensive understanding of the execution efficiency of the system that we're dealing with. Typically, when we're dealing with this, we have to look at many different factors in a multimodal way, and we will use some fairly sophisticated tools to do what I've shown here is the IoT complex event processing. A great way, if not the best way, to improve visibility and insights into a system is to generate a single view dashboard such as the detailed view that you see here. This is an outcome of step 2, and it's one example of how to consolidate all the learnings from step 1 by organizing it into a view which crucially allows a drill down from corporate financials to increasingly diagnostic measurements and advanced analytics, which you see on the left-hand side of the dashboard, to allow for rapid response to change. And it's here that we can also connect specific improvement efforts and strategic initiatives directly to financials to measure the outcome benefits. Now, clearly, most companies are striving to reach these goals. But if you've seen recent surveys, all of these surveys show that 95% of all organizations, unbelievably, are facing significant obstacles in creating a unified field view of their data, like the one you see here. And 75% of all businesses say that poor quality data has made it challenging to achieve their digital transformation plans. Now, at the individual level, 25% of the professionals responding to these same surveys spend about a quarter of their entire day looking for data, which is, by the way, a significant increase over 2017. And it begs the question as to why. Well, it turns out that it's mostly change management issues, and it's where the organization has not been adequately prepped for change. And another related cause to that is lack of a full deployment of step 1, which is we summarized on the previous slide, where a business simply rushes into installing a technological upgrade without getting its business process house in order. Now, finally, in this view, I wanted to reinforce the fact that there is no such thing as a one and done in this space. A change is the law of life, and standing still invites disaster. The foundational to a company's ability to master downswings and meet its business goals is to perpetually refine its capability in a couple crucial areas. First of all, is to understand how various forces of change are impacting execution of the business strategy. And then secondly, increase organizational agility to quickly react to and anticipate change. Now, overlaying here in this graphic is Octagon's methodology, which is known as Value to Market Optimization, or V2MO, And it's a versatile leading-edge solution for these requirements, and we've been effectively deploying it within manufacturing, retail, and specialized service sector enterprises now for several years with great success. Okay, we have a poll question.
Thanks very much indeed. So what I'm going to do is ask the audience listening, which of these solutions is your highest priority today? So I've got some options for you here. Choose whichever one you think is your highest priority. So operational visibility, operational insights, AI-assisted operations, digital twin, and edge intelligence. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to make your choice and hit the submit button. So let me just run through those again. Operational visibility, operational insights, AI-assisted operations, digital twin, and edge intelligence. I'm going to give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hit the submit button, and I'll hand you back to your presenter.
Okay, thanks again, Ian. All right, I'm going to talk through quickly a case project here. This particular one is all about improving inventory turns. And in this project, we helped a specialty plastics producer solve a problem in 3 months that had been plaguing them for more than a decade. The key to the project was finding the hidden factor that was being ignored by the business because, like an ache that a person becomes numb to over time, nobody had stepped in and seriously questioned why things were the way they were. And everybody from leadership on down had accepted how their reactor network, their plastic manufacturing that made the grades, was being planned, and that the maintenance of that results of that planning was simply the cost of doing business. While the project started out with the goal of improving inventory turns, we did a pretty deep flow down of the critical factors, and the examination of these uncovered during that exercise a serious second quality problem, which was caused mostly by the hard to produce product grades. And these were being ordered mostly by non-priority customers. It's kind of like the tail wagging the dog here. So after some restructuring of the operational planning processes as well as customer and product segmentation policies, in the end we found enough capacity release in the network to equal 1.5 mega reactors. And better yet, about 60% of this found capacity was readily available. So it was just simply money that was growing on a tree at that point. And it was taking advantage of this additional capacity that enabled the business to beat their earnings PO that year when originally they were anticipating they weren't going to make it. So that was a huge win for them. And yes, we did achieve the original project goal. In this case, we smashed through the project goal of 5 turns, and we achieved 6.3 turns the following year. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Paul Stone. He's going to talk to us on another use case focus about permission to dig. Paul?
Thanks, Cliff. It's interesting to see the techniques you can use to gain benefits from process improvement. I particularly like your term Captain Obvious for processes that you instinctively know are ready for improvement. I'd like to talk to you now about one of those Captain Obvious processes in the construction industry. It's called permission to dig, a paper-based process that was successfully digitized using the FlowForma DPA platform. Permission to dig is a critical process prevalent in the construction industry that mitigates risk related to health, safety, unattended damage to third-party assets, and so on when excavating on construction projects. It's a relatively complex form that must be completed and authorized for every 3 meter squared area of the construction site. Therefore, as you can guess, on large construction sites, the number of instances of this process is very high. Ensuring that every area of the site is covered is a daunting task, with non-compliance risk being very high if you don't have an up-to-date view of all the processes in progress at any one point in time. It's typically a paper-driven process across the industry, managed on spreadsheets. There are several challenges to automating within the industry. The process starts out in the field with limited connectivity for apps running on devices, so it's difficult sometimes to get the process started. Currently, you're doing it on paper, you then have to send a piece of paper on to the next actor in the process. Also, there's a big cultural shift challenge where staff who are used to working on paper need to move on to electronic devices. The process comes inside Project HQ for approval. So your piece of paper needs to go inside the HQ, which may be in a remote site, and then back out to the work site for final action. On a fixed-term project, the faster you deploy a digital solution, the greater the benefit would be on the project finances. The solution to the challenges we built using the FlowForma DPA platform. FlowForma was able to capture information remotely and validate it at point of entry, reducing the number of times that a form might have to go to and from an approval point. The form was then automatically passed into HQ for approval. Obviously, it's an electronic system. It happens instantaneously. And then the data was stored in a central database for reporting. The complete solution was built in just 2 weeks using our DPA platform, and because the solution focuses on ease of use, it was fully adopted within 3 months, which is something to say when the end users were typically used to using paper for all their processes. It was important as well that the solution could be changed easily. It was something that had never been done before, so you needed to act quickly when feedback came back from the field, ensuring smooth adoption of the system. The end result was a very significant improvement in process metrics across the board, reducing overall project risk and saving millions over the time frame of the project. This is a quick view of what the actual system looked like. It just gives you a brief visibility on what a digitized process looks like to an end user. Now, I'll be covering off the FlowForma functionality in much more detail in a demo shortly, but just to give you a quick view of what a solution looks like, there we go. An important point as well is that once that information is captured on the electronic form and processed through the correct process, it's available for reporting. And this dashboard gives a view of the entire site of all the permission to dig processes active at any one point in time and what status they're currently at, highlighting any bottlenecks, any red flags, so they can be addressed quickly and easily by management. And on that point, on reporting, I'd like to pass you back to Cliff, who will talk to you about real-time accurate data.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Let's talk a little bit about some of the more advanced measures that you can take in order to, in fact, take advantage of real-time data. Now, in this view, there's really a dizzying array of IoT platforms in the market today, and that's, by last count, there's about 300, maybe a little bit more. And in the simplest terms, any operation that has been appropriately prepared to take advantage of this technology can expect to increase its productivity significantly. Any business can do so organically by connecting the most important sensors and systems first, as we've previously discussed. And because through our visibility and insights work, and we already know what the critical information is that we need to track in an increasingly sophisticated manner. And so now this becomes a relatively straightforward IT exercise. But had we not baselined our system, we wouldn't be in position to take full advantage of the analytics. AI functionality and system integration offered by an IoT platform is pretty crucial and an important aspect of this whole venture. And one important note to stress here as a key enabler of all of this is the importance of digital process automation across all levels of this endeavor to empower agility and efficiency into this advanced mode. By establishing a digital twin, as you can see here, it affords a business the following attributes. There's several, actually. Monitoring is one. A digital twin merges live data from its physical counterpart with an interactive visual interface. Another one is maintenance. The improved monitoring capabilities shown above feed directly into maintenance efficiency. Training is a third one. Digital twin can be used for broad topic training, such as site orientation and safety protocols, or specific technical training, such as repair and installation procedures. Another aspect is communication. You can get automatic alerts about predicted failures or quality deviations, which can be viewed by all relevant personnel. And this includes tips and advice, which can be shared across the organization, which includes highly specific technical details. And that's all thanks to the visual nature of the digital twin. And then finally, strategy. A digital twin can provide insight across all stages of the product lifecycle by refining assumptions through the use of predictive analytics and establishing a digital thread that connects individual systems to improve traceability, and then finally visualizing the use of all the products in the field and in real time. It's a huge advantage. And then we come to edge intelligence. Every business either purposefully or organically develops a series of processes designed to perform three essential functions. Number one is to detect and avoid, through countermeasures if possible, any negative consequences of abnormal situations before they occur. Secondarily, they need to quickly develop corrective actions to disruptions as required. And then finally, solve and learn from a disruption event to make detection and response ever more robust in the future. Now, these are basic requirements that everybody has to develop in some form. And as I've said, everybody has to meet this mandate. But gaining an ever-increasing edge intelligence ability is the name of the game here, and it provides the right information to empower businesses programmed in this space. Okay, so pass it back to you, Paul, and time to talk about the A14 project.
Thanks, Cliff. So on to our case study, the A14. Here I'll talk about how a large construction project digitized their processes rapidly, and the approach that they took, and also the results that they achieved. So first, a little bit of background on the A14. It's a highway improvements project, the largest in the UK, being delivered by a joint venture formed by Costain, Skanska and Balfour Beatty. With a budget of 1.5 billion, time frame of 4 years, and a workforce of 2,500 workers, it's a very significant undertaking for Highways England, who procure all of the major roadworks in the UK. Highways England decided that they would take a new approach to major works where the joint venture would be required to use shared services and common processes. The goal being to deliver the project on time, on budget, but with higher efficiency and lower risk than past projects. The enterprising IT manager on the project decided that to achieve these goals, the project would need to move from paper and spreadsheets to a digital process automation solution. In terms of the requirements that were written for the DPA solution, the project defines its requirements as being a platform that operated within Office 365 and SharePoint. These tools had already been chosen as general productivity tools within the organization and were already present. The DPA platform had to assist with data and documents, as well as process execution, and provide data and process metrics for improved reporting. The platform had to be easy to configure without the need for any specific technical skills. The project had a very small IT team and with many processes measuring in the hundreds, and the process improvement initiative would only succeed if the team could work with the business to get as many processes digitized as quickly as possible. Finally, the cost had to be reasonable, so no expensive external contractors to build a solution, and costs that could be scaled based on the number of people that actually used the system. The A14 project needed results quickly, so it went for the Captain Obvious processes straight away and hit those hard. But once the ball was rolling, they quickly followed with processes where the return was not so obvious. The platform allowed for this, as so little effort was required to draft a solution, try it out, and establish if a process was worth further effort. At the last count, over 76 processes were digitized, with many more in the pipeline. And this was achieved in part by digitizing the processes using IT resources, and also using business resources as well. Some of the success from this short list of examples are labour procurement, where site managers could request new hires from the site location, and those requests will be passed to external agencies, i.e. entities that were outside of the project, outside of the joint venture. With joiners and leavers, new contractors could be brought onboarded safely onto new work sites, and also off-boarded. Requisitions where procurement could process new requests for supplies initiated by on-site resources. Now, each of these processes brought significant savings. If I could share one typical example, targeted risk monitoring. This resulted in a 77K saving over a 30-month time frame, with each digitized process gaining an efficiency boost upwards of 50%. The time savings soon add up. So if you're able to automate not just one process but several processes, that's where you'll really see a high return on a digital process automation implementation. Finally, on to the results. A key thing, I guess, was that the DPA solution provided a consistent interface. All processes look the same, which makes training and adoption much easier on a large scale. The system also resulted in faster processes. It's hard to quantify, but you can measure because you have statistics on how long each process takes to complete. And as you apply efficiencies to your process designs, you can directly measure the benefits of those changes. A key thing was short time to value. The whole DPA initiative would have fallen on its face had it taken a long time to deploy processes. However, processes can be built in days with a DPA solution and deployed in weeks. The system resulted in better governance. With high adoption, validation at point of entry, combined with a full audit trail, this resulted in excellent governance across the entire project. Mobile accessibility. A key requirement for the A14 project was to have the ability for people to work using this system on-site using mobile devices. Mobile is now so much more acceptable in the field within construction, while previously the workforce was heavily reliant on paper forms. And finally, data is key. So digitized processes capture all the data and human activity required to meet business goals and achieve project aims. This data is then available to management to enable better decisions in the future, and ultimately the information can be on past activities and outcomes can improve processes over time. And this was a key thing for Highways England, who procured the motorway, who wanted to use all the benefits gained of digitizing processes for the next large construction project and the next one and the next one, gradually building up a database of digitized processes that could be reused again and again. And now I'd just like to pass back to Ian for another poll.
Great, thanks very much indeed, Paul. So, question to you, the audience. What's important to you when selecting a process management tool? Now, you can choose as many of these as you like. Let me run you through them. You've got a no-code solution, a code solution, integration with Office 365, and the ability to engage external users. So I'll run you through those again. Choose the ones that you wish, then click the Submit button. So what's important to you when selecting a process management tool? A no-code solution, a code solution, integration with Office 365, or the ability to engage external users. You can choose as many as you like, and I'll take you from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hit that Submit button, and I'll hand you back to Paul.
Thanks, Ian. So now I'd like to give you a demonstration of our DPA platform. And what I'd like to do first, however, is just place our platform in the context of traditional business process management. So there are many business process management solutions out there, but there are some key features that have FlowForma and other DPA platforms that make them different from the traditional approach. So traditionally, business process management systems had high upfront costs. They were often based on-premise, which means that they are using software that, sorry about my slides here. They're using software that operates in infrastructure that's hard to deploy. With digital process automation, it's a transformation focus and it quickly facilitates enterprise-wide adoption. And there's a very short training time. So as you train users on the system, you can quickly deploy that solution, gain feedback, and alter the solution as you deploy it out into the workforce. And this allows the solution to be quickly adopted, and the faster it's adopted, the faster you're gaining benefits, the faster you're getting a return. So it's a short time to value, and that's so important when you're deploying a DPA solution. So now I'd like to show you what the DPA solution looks like and carry out a demonstration. Just bear with me a moment. Okay, so a little bit about FlowForma. FlowForma is a solution that's deployed in Office 365, deployed on SharePoint, and it uses SharePoint like a database, a content database. And what does that mean? Well, all the data and tasks and detail of a workflow are stored inside SharePoint. And that's as much as you really need to know. From an end user perspective, they're very much using FlowForma, and when they execute a process, they see something quite similar to what you're seeing on the screen right now. This particular process that I've chosen for demonstration is a purchase requisition, and FlowForma allows you to execute a process while at the same time capturing data and documents, processing documents that are associated with that process. So it's an all-in-one type of approach, and it was built this way specifically to encourage adoption by end users, so that everything that you need to know can be seen in context in a single screen. And this greatly makes ease of use. This promotes ease of use and makes the system much easier to adopt. And while I'm showing you today this purchase requisition, every process that you build in FlowForma has some very similar components. So for example, at the top of this screen, you'll see here a step bar. Now the step bar shows you the steps in the process as a quick visual guide for the end user, the business user, the guy in the field, to quickly see where they are in the process right now. And I can see I'm right here on the PO request step. And all of these steps need to be executed for the process to complete and the business goal to be achieved. Now each one of these steps is assigned to a resource, and only that resource can complete the step. So for example, we have 3 approval steps here, and each of those approval steps will be assigned to specific resources. And that can be a person or it can be a team. So for example, the level 1 approval could be assigned to procurement. The level 3 approval, well, that could be CEO. So you could be assigning that step specifically to the CEO, and only they would be able to complete that step. The steps that you're seeing here change as time goes by. So as you're moving through the workflow, you're gathering data. And based on that data, you're reaching decision points, and the workflow may include additional steps, or some steps may be removed based on that decision point being reached and the data stating something. So for example, if the purchase order amount is less than 500 euros, well, hey, that means you only need a lower level of approval to process that particular purchase order. So as you're capturing data, the system executes these things called business rules in the background that alter the appearance of the form, the progress of the workflow, and they can carry out actions such as sending emails, pushing data into a document, for example. So the whole system is very dynamic in that as you progress through the workflow, you're capturing data, and that causes things to happen. But that's all transparent in a way to the end user. It's all carried out in the background by FlowForma, and the end user just goes to opens up their form and fills in their relevant section. So right now I'm on the purchase order request, and I can enter in some details. Now we call these details questions, and all these questions are related to this particular task, so this particular step in the process. I've got to go in and fill all this information. Now the system supports a wide variety of different types of data. So for example, we can see lists here where we can pick an option from a drop-down list. It will also pre-populate information, so you might notice that the cost center code automatically changes now when I pick an alternative cost center. And it can pre-populate the entire form if necessary. Also, there's a wide variety of data that can be displayed. So all these fields here look fairly traditional, but you can, for example, display a map on the screen and capture GPS location just as easily as you can display a drop-down list or a validated user, whatever. So we support a wide range of different types of data that you can display on the form. And again, just reminding everybody that this data here represents the data required to complete this particular step in the process. And once that data is captured, it will move on to the next logical step in the process. So let me go down here. I've pre-filled most of this just to save a little bit of time. And down here at the end, we'll see that we have recording some information about the items that we wish to purchase in a table. And based on the total value, what it will do is it will decide what to do next. So we can see some rules that we've displayed here for the end user, giving them some guidance as to what's going to happen next. And we can see that, well, if the value is between 3 and 25,000, then only level 2 approval will be required. So level 3 is only required for if it's more than 25,000, which is not. So when I press submit at the bottom, all this information is saved in the system, and it automatically moves on to the next logical step. Now, I should say that the next logical step in the process is not necessarily the one immediately afterwards. It depends, as I said, some steps may be hidden or removed depending on the data that's being captured. And sure enough, that's happened here. You might remember we had a level 1, 2, and 3, and now we just have a level 1 and 2. And the reason is that the value of the PO is lower than the level 3 requirement. So the workflow changes depending on the data that's being captured. Now, just as well, the form would normally close at this point because somebody else would be carrying out the approval, but for a demonstration, I've assigned it to myself. And what will happen as well is that the system will automatically email the approver to say, please click on this link and go in and complete your process. So the system is very user-friendly. It's designed to encourage end users to carry out their work, complete the form, fill in the data, make the decision, and progress the workflow on. And it's designed very deliberately to do this. And in fact, we've won awards for our end user interface because it's so simple and straightforward to use. Now, that's all very well, but how long did it take to put this little application together? Because that's really what it is. It's an application for that handles purchase requisitions. Well, that's done using our configuration tool. Our configuration tool is called the FlowDesigner. And the FlowDesigner allows you to add in steps into a process. We have a series of steps here, but also to add in questions into the steps. That's the data items. So you can see here our list of steps on a purchase order. Inside the purchase order request, you can see all the detail of all the questions or pieces of data that you saw on the screen. Now, in addition to that, we have these things called business rules. And the business rules take actions based on the information in the form. So, for example, we have a business rule here that hides those steps based on the value of the purchase order. And all of this is configured using a no-code interface. Now, what does that mean? Well, typically when you're building out IT systems, you have to employ IT specialists who have expertise in certain coding languages and other technical expertise to actually construct a system like this. However, we've built this system so that it can be configured by business users, in fact, and it's all done using a no-code interface. And what that means is you don't have to have those IT specialized skills to build out the purchase requisition form that I showed you earlier. All you need to be able to do is understand your process, and that's an area that people like Cliff can help you with in the understanding of what your process is. It's so critical that you understand your process. But once you have an understanding of it, you can then quickly, literally input it into FlowForma, and then, hey presto, you press save, and the process is ready to be used. So what we see here is our no-code interface. Let me just show you how it works. If I wanted to add in an additional workflow step into this process, I just click on plus step over here, and I'm going to put in a name called categorization, let's say. Now, you have to apologize for my typos while I'm doing this. Typing and talking has always been a challenge for me. Now let's put in here categorization. It's a step when it gets added. It's added simply to the end of the process, but you may actually want it to be moved up. So I'm going to move it up here to become the second step in the process. When I click on that step, I can then add a question. This is a piece of data that I want to capture at that point in the process. And the data is, but let's just call it category. And down here, I need to specify the type of data that's being captured. So by default, it's just a simple piece of text. But for a category, I might want to choose a choice question. And down here, I can then enter in the category values. So category 1, 2, 3. And I can specify whether I want it as a drop-down or, let's say, some radio buttons and so on. So the key point here is that as I change the actual type of question, the form itself changes so that it's related to the type of data that I want to capture. Now, they're two very simple types that I showed you, but we support a very wide range of different types of data. So, for example, if I wanted to look up a list in SharePoint, a table in SharePoint, you can see here this changes. I can pick the list that I want to look up. And then once I pick the list, it will automatically retrieve the columns in the list, so I can say, well, I want to look up maybe the contact from that escalation list. Again, it's all achieved using this simple point-and-click interface, and that's the way the whole system is designed to work. So you're always filling in a form, configuring the solution. So to make it feel mandatory, I just click on Required Yes, and here I can put in some help text for the field and so on. So it's very, very straightforward to use. I'm just going to change that back here to choice. I'm going to enter 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to save it. Okay, and that adds my category in. And I can go and create these steps very quickly and easily, and you can see that actually it's very, the time it takes to build out steps and questions is very simple, and the process requisition form that I showed you earlier on, it took about 6-7 hours to build in its entirety. So really it's a very rapid way of building prototypes or drafting prototypes where you can quickly show end users what the system is going to look like. And they can give you feedback, and then you know what, if they say that step's not necessary, you can very quickly delete it. I'm going to leave it in there for just one little second longer because I want to talk to you about our business rules. So these are our steps, these are our questions. Now what about the actions? Our business rules are really the most powerful part of the system. So let's say if category is equal to 2, if they select 2 in that drop-down, I want the approval steps to disappear. Approval is simply not required. So let me go in and create a business rule here to hide and show a step. So this is our business rule editor, and it allows me to, for example, hide and show approvals based on category. And here I can specify a condition, so I want to hide the approvals only if the category is equal to 2. So I can select from my drop-down here my new category question. If it equals 2, then I want to hide the approval steps. And what this does is it makes the approvals simply disappear in front of you, in front of the end user, I should say, so that the end user no longer has to complete those steps. It literally branches the workflow, removes those steps from the workflow. And that's a simple business rule. Now we support a wide range of business rules. I'm certainly not going to go through them all today, but please get in contact with us for a more complete demonstration if you want to see a more detailed view of how the system works. But we provide a wide range of business rules that allow you to do things like integrate with external systems. And all of our integration business rules work the same way, and they are truly no-code rules. And they allow you to, for example, select a list and map the list values onto target questions. And straight off, by the way, you'll notice that this integration rule looks an awful lot like the other rule that I showed you to branch the workflow. And it's because we've taken this approach of making everything as standardized as possible, because we find that these standard interfaces allow people to adopt the system as quickly as possible, which leads me on to the training cycle. It's a 2-day training cycle to learn all the functionality of FlowForma that you would need to build that purchase requisition process. So it really is a short training cycle, and we've deliberately designed the system not to be easy to use, but to be easy to adopt. And that goes for people configuring the system as well. So I'm just going to actually show you this very briefly. I know my time is limited, but just to say that integration is normally a difficult area for people to configure. Integration usually requires coding. What I can actually say here, I can pull out information on the contact where the name equals Paul, and I can just map values from the list straight into the workflow. You see here all the different steps. I can pick a field from one of those steps, like cost center. I can pull that information straight into cost center, and I can do that on multiple columns as well. Something like this is very difficult to achieve using code. It takes you could take an IT resource some time to do. It takes seconds with FlowForma. And all of our system integration rules work the same way. So again, like talking about the similarity between the different business rules, there's so many of them, so many things that you can do with the system, but they all work in the same kind of basic format. And they've all been developed and refined over a period of years. So we launched FlowForma back in 2015 as a no-code solution. At the time we did it, there was really nobody else in that market. And over the past few years now, we've constantly refined the system and we've brought it up to date and added new features, which leads me on a way to our release cycle. So every 3 months we release a version update of FlowForma. That includes new features and refinements to make sure that our system can handle as many of the use cases and scenarios that are coming back to us from our clients. Not only our clients in construction, our clients in pharma, our clients in financial services, basically in the broad range of industries that we serve. And one last thing I'd like to show you very briefly is communications. So we have this ability to generate communications from the workflow. So for example, sending an email, but also we can send emails, we can also generate documents. So the system handles not just the steps and the data, it also handles documents. Whether that's documents that you might upload from a source or whether it's documents that you might want to generate. We use a system of templating for documents. It uses Microsoft Word. In this case, I'm just going to show you the email templating system, just to give you an idea of how easy it is to generate communications based on templates. So in this particular template, if I want to add in additional information into this message, targeted message that I want to send to somebody, I can quickly add in, for example, questions and data input into the form, into the message. I can also include things like links in the message and so on, so that people can quickly get back into the form, and you can send notifications. They click on the link, they're back into the form. Now there's a lot to talk about on business rules, but that's really as much as I can fit into today's demonstration. The other thing I'd like to say is that as you're moving through that workflow, all that the data in the workflow is captured, and the current status is captured, and the current assignments are captured, and all this information can be fed back to you via a dashboard-style interface. So we have a dashboard interface which allows you to see a kind of helicopter view of all the activity within a certain business area. So for example, this particular dashboard, it relates to talent management. So we're showing all the new employees being onboarded, mentoring requests, that kind of thing. And these dashboards can be put together very quickly and easily, again, using a no-code interface. Okay, so one final thing I'd like to say, the very last thing, is that the system also works externally as well. So while a really key point to say, because it's a big thing in the construction sector, especially when dealing with joint ventures and working with many, many suppliers, that you want to include those external entities inside your workflows as well. And our system allows you to do that. You can actually externalize part of the workflow so that people can click on a link, let's say in an email, and they can come in automatically into FlowForma, even though they're not working within your organization. This is fantastic for things like supplier onboarding, where you can send out a supplier application, send them a link, they click on the link, they can fill in the application, press submit, and all that information gets passed back into your internal tenant and stored in your tenant for further processing through a workflow. It's a really very useful function and something quite unique to FlowForma. Okay, at that point, I think I'd like to pass you back now to Ian.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. I just wanted to say we've got all kinds of people here that have benefited from what you do. So thanks to Clifford and Paul for your insights today. You outlined some really good use cases and best practices for digital transformation, which I'm sure will help loads of people on today's call. So you can see the customers here on this slide who've also been helped by your work in the past. Now, we did ask a couple of polls, so I'm going to bring those results up right now. First of all, we asked which of these solutions is your highest priority today. A tie for first place, operational visibility and operational insights, both in at 42%, and AI-assisted operations at 17%. Nothing for digital twin, nothing for edge intelligence there at all. Paul, would you like to say anything about that result?
That's me, and this is Cliff.
That's more you, Clifford.
That's all right. That actually fits almost exactly within what I had mentioned earlier, which is that 95% of all companies are still in the space where they're trying to take advantage of the technology that they have and develop the right insights. And everybody is working on that, and it's really a necessary prerequisite before you can get to the more advanced measures, which are the final three choices. So kudos to those who have gone beyond the insights phase and have gotten into the AI-assisted operations. There's a whole horizon of opportunity now that awaits you. For everybody else, give me a call. I can help accelerate your progress.
That sounds like an offer. Let's go on to the next slide. What's important to you when selecting a process management tool? Pretty even across the board, apart from no-code, a code solution which was down to 15%. So a no-code solution up at 60, integration with Office 365 at 65, and the ability to engage external users at 50%. I think this does speak quite a lot to your idea of a no-code solution, something that's very, very useful for other people, something that's very user-friendly, because usually when you start talking about AI and RPA and BPM and everything else, people start worrying that they're going to have to learn how to code, and no code looks like it might be a useful solution to everybody. So, Grant, let's move on to a few questions and answers. Clifford, let's start with you. How do I figure out what processes to prioritize for improvement?
Well, as we summarize in this discussion, ideally we need to execute a discovery process that baselines your business's control authority. And then we would be generating one work product as a summary of which processes are in good shape, which are broken or ignored, and any gaps where processes are needed. It's very similar to the graphic summary that you saw in that first slide.
Sure. Okay. And Paul, is it easy for people to onboard a FlowForma process automation? What's involved there?
Yeah, absolutely. We've designed the system so that you can get up and running very quickly. You basically install FlowForma as an add-in into your Office 365 environment, SharePoint environment. So I guess that's a key thing to say, that FlowForma has a dependency on SharePoint, but once that's there, it's very straightforward to get up and running. And the other thing is that once you've installed the system, we have a process called SureStart, and basically it's our own client onboarding process, and it allows you to get up and running with your first process very quickly too. So we're talking in the space of maybe 8 weeks or less to actually get the first process deployed in your environment and saving you money, basically.
Okay. I've got a question here from Richard Whittaker from Eurovia, who says, this permit-to-dig solution, did it improve quality overall?
Yes, it did. There was a noticeable improvement because previously, where people were relying on paper, it was very obvious that pieces of paper were getting missing, and also that pieces of paper were the approvals for permits were not being passed back on time and so on, and it was causing delays. So it was reducing the overall quality of work, and they certainly noticed a significant improvement when they implemented an electronic solution. It really was a big success.
Great. And Clifford, so if your company sort of identifies all these bottlenecks, what should you do next?
Well, by identifying those bottlenecks, I'd say you've taken the first crucial steps to process optimization. And so now we need to go the full distance and quantify the impact of those bottlenecks. And then we need to look for the secondary hidden interactions and possibly take a look at your big data, which that's all your IoT inputs, and detect any trends in multimodal interactions. It just depends on the size of the system that you're trying to optimize there. Possibly some of these bottlenecks are being caused by inadequate or missing processes, and so we would obviously need to assess that aspect as well, Ian.
Okay. A couple more questions. First, Paul, with the A14 case study, can you tell me a bit more about letting external users input to processes?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a system called FlowForma Engage that allows you to extend the process outside of your organization. So you literally can provide those external users with a link that has a unique ID associated with it, and they can click on the link, fill in a form, enter the detail, and then when they submit the information, it gets passed back inside your own tenancy, your Office 365 tenancy. But this happens in a very easy-to-use way, let's say. Again, it's a no-code configuration. So you can just select a step and say, you want this step to be external, and then have the system send out the link and process the data when you retrieve it. So it's a very easy to use way of externalizing part of your workflow.
And the last question, which I was going to ask, but Jose Juan Hernandez has asked it for me, because data is really important. Data is always the driving force of all of this stuff. And Jose wants to know, how important is it to have a healthy master data when you're automating processes?
I think that Paul and myself are probably going to want to have a crack at this one. Let me just first say that master data, or really the system data accuracy, there's several metrics around that. The lack of a process to actually even update master data, we're finding in and of itself is an issue that we have to go after in the very beginning. And if you cannot know the truth because your master data is inaccurate, then not only does that cause a host of problems in planning and scheduling, for instance, a business system or manufacturing process. So that's something that absolutely has to be done on a regular basis. So this is of absolute importance to have. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, just absolutely, Cliff. Couldn't agree more. And in fact, just to say that we have several clients who use FlowForma specifically for maintaining their master data, because what they're finding is that it's garbage in, garbage out. If your master data is wrong, then your reporting is going to be off. So it's so critical to get that master data right. And for large organizations with complex, let's say, ERP implementations, setting up a product or a client on those systems requires input from several different departments, maybe within the organization. So having a workflow system that ensures that all data is captured from every resource that needs to input into it is critical to getting that data accurate. And getting the data accurate is critical, ultimately, to getting the right reporting and getting the right benefits from that reporting. So yeah, master data is very important.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Paul. Thank you, Clifford. Time, unfortunately, is against us. I'm going to have to call a halt there. So I'd just like to thank everybody for coming along today. Thank you. You can download the A14 case study from the resources section. You can also book a call with the experts from today's webinar, or you can register for a free trial. We'll give you the option to do that very shortly. So thanks very much indeed for your time. Any questions we haven't got time to do in the session, we're going to take those and post them over to the presenters. We'll give them your contact details so they can come back to you. And it just remains for me to remind you that today's session will shortly be available to watch back on demand. The slide deck is available for you to download as well. And I'd like to thank Paul Stone and Clifford Lee for their wisdom and expertise today. So thank you very much. You've just got time to finish off your sentence there. Click the submit button, because we'll be out of here right now. Thanks very much for your time, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.